Okay, we've got the little spinny circle. So that means we are live once again with another Money Moves. Welcome back, everybody. We've got some good stuff to talk to you about today. So, how are you doing, Wendy? It's great to see you here once again.
Doing great. Good to be here.
Good. I can just sense the excitement. I can feel it through your voice coming through. Come on.
I'm just
Come
looking
on.
at
I know it's
how
Tuesday, but
funny it is outside.
I'm ready for summer, man. We got baseball going on and we've had a bunch of weather, just warm, cold, rain, rain, rain. Oh, there's the sun, rain again. So I'm ready for hot heat, all kinds of stuff. And cool thing is we've got a team trip to Vegas next week. I know you're going to be out there and a bunch of other people. So hopefully it's going to be nice and warm out there too. So little team building activities out there with a bunch of people from all over the country. So it's good. But that is not why we're here today. We're actually here today to talk about the 3 most important documents that you need to help protect your wealth, your family, your nest egg, everything and all of the above. And we're going to be talking about that in just a minute. So do me a favor, show some love, click that little subscribe button and give us a thumbs up or a heart or wherever you're at, on your social media platform, and share it with friends and say, hey, they're getting ready to get started. But we're going to talk about this in just a quick second. So give us a second and we're going to tell you what 3 documents you need as part of your financial strategy. So we are back with another Money Move. So again, we talked about this as we were kind of coming up with topics, and I think this actually came from one of our listeners. I don't know. That's kind of viewers. There you go. Watcher sounds creepy, but on talking about, hey, what are some other ways? And so we're going to talk about these 3 important documents. And you want to kind of kick us off, Wendy, and we can kind of dive into it.
Yeah. It's something that when we're sitting down with clients, we always ask if they have it. And 90% of the time they do not. And that one of those documents is your will. Yep. So having the set of instructions for when you pass on, I know it's something that when my kids were little, I thought about a lot. My only big question was who's going to take my kids, right? But as we've talked to more and more people, I'm realizing how few people have it. Even people in my family who are getting up in later years in life and have a ton of assets don't have wills.
Yeah. So, well, and you see that all the time too. I mean, you look what happened with Prince, right? Same situation. He didn't really have an estate plan as part of this, this package, right? That set of instructions that go beyond. Aretha Franklin, same deal, didn't have a will. And so what happens, when first of all, most people we talk to, they feel like I don't have enough money for, to have a will, or I don't. And that's not really the case. I mean, you may not have a ton of assets when it comes to like stacks of cash or real estate or whatever the case may be, but I'm sure you've got certain keepsakes and things like that you want to leave to certain people, and that's why it's so critical and it's so easy to do. And a lot of people, don't really understand where to get started. And we'll talk about that, towards the end of the episode. But, it's one of those things that it is so critical. It's like that set of instructions. And, you start getting involved. The state's going to determine a lot of stuff. You made a comment about your children, right? And I remember I talked to a client one time and they were having that challenging conversation of, husband and wife, okay, they go into my family, they go into your family. Everybody's got their own personal opinions when it comes to that. So what happens is nothing ever gets done. And then God forbid something happens. And, so you look at that and it's like, okay, well, her plan was my sister in Ohio. She was in Tennessee. My sister in Ohio is going to get him. I said, okay, how is that going to happen? She's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, the state of Tennessee doesn't know your sister and they're responsible for the well-being of the children because they're citizens of Tennessee. And she's like, well, I never really thought about it. So they're going to go through an investigation period and, the kids may be put into foster care, after something happens to, something were to happen to both parents, a car wreck or something like that. And so it's something that we never really think of because, hey, it's kind of dark to think about that stuff, right? But it's so critical and so important. And that's just talking about the children's side of it, right?
Nobody wants to think about dying yet. Everybody does eventually.
Yeah, we all have a date, right? We all have a date, and accidents are accidents. They're not planned, right? And they happen all the time. I mean, I look back, I'm still relatively young, and I bet you I've got, since high school, I probably have 15, 20 friends that have passed away because of various things, unexpected health, car accidents, things like that. And it's just kind of crazy when you look at that. And, later in life, a lot of them had children, and, you just kind of hope it all works out. And you can protect your family by simply having a will in place, and we'll talk a little bit about that, again, how to set that in motion. But even the financial aspects, of I want to make sure that things, a certain amount goes to this person, a certain amount that goes to that person. Because I'm going to tell you right now, money makes people crazy, right? Mm-hmm. Whether they're related or not, they may get along perfectly well now, but if all of a sudden there's stuff that two people want or whatever, they're going to go to odds or come to a disagreement on I should get it or they should get it or whatever the case may be. And I know me personally, and I'm sure you're the same way, Wendy. You don't want to think that people were fighting over your stuff after the fact. And a quick way to solve that is I want that person to have this. I want that person to have that. And then they got nobody else to be upset except for you, because you're the one that determined it by having the will. And you don't really care at that point because you're not there. Right. I mean, let's be honest about it. That's the way I'm looking. I'm in a better place at that point. You guys, you can be mad at me, but so what? This is what I want. And it's your stuff, your will. So again, those are the two big factors, I think. I don't know if you've got anything else you want to add on that.
Sometimes people say, oh, I don't have kids, so I don't need a will, right? But if you have assets and you have money, you don't just have to leave to kids. Like, I love hearing stories of people leaving their inheritance to a charity that they care about, or a school or whatever. So there's so much that can be done. And yeah, basically it's putting you in the driver's seat. Like, you don't want to leave this earth and be like, oh, whatever happens. Like, you take control of that before you go.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Now, the other number two, I guess, of the three important documents, the second one I think is so critical, and it kind of ties to, the last will and testament. It's a living will. And, a lot of people don't have this. And it's the whole point of this is to plan for the unknown and have a plan of action in place. And that's the other thing too. A living will is you're still alive, right? But you're not coherent. You're not able to make decisions. You're not able to, determine things. And, I guess let me play out this scenario. And I don't want this to be a doom and gloom kind of day, because what happens, folks, when you get this stuff in line, right? When you get a last will and testament, when you get a living will in place, and the third document we're going to talk about here in a minute, it's an empowering feeling that you have, because you know that you've taken care of it. Yeah. You know that you don't have to put that on anybody else, right? And so going back to the living will, if there needs to be kind of a decision made, you don't want to put that on your significant other to make your decision, right? You don't want to put that on your kids to make that decision. And what I'm talking about, prime example, car accident. You weren't killed, got you to the hospital. Now you're hooked up to a bunch of machines and you're in a coma. What's going to happen? Mm-hmm. Do they keep you on the machine forever? Yeah. And that's a personal decision. I'm not saying one thing's right or one thing's wrong, but I know me personally, I don't want to be hooked up to a machine and be technically alive, but not really alive.
Right.
And I don't necessarily want to put that decision on my children to have to make that call to, quote unquote, pull the plug.
And when, right. When
to pull the plug, right? Now, I've always joked, give me a couple days to try to pull out of it, right? Don't get too quick on that plug, but I don't want to, drain out my financial, because I've built a pretty good, nest egg empire, call it whatever you want. I want to be able to pass that on to my children. I don't want the hospital to eat it all up with bills or something like that, just because my kids don't want to be the one to make that decision. Don't put that on your kids. Don't put that on your spouse either. And not only that, you may have a situation where in that, like with the spouse or something, that they don't want to give up, but you do. I would not want to be, hooked up to a machine or a ventilator or something like that for an extended period of time if there was no hope to ever come back. But that spouse may want to cling on to every little last bit of hope. Okay. And say, well, there's no living will in place, so we're going to go ahead and keep them plugged up. And then that's really against what I wanted to do, right? So again, you're keeping control from day one. Once these are in place, you've got the control pieces in place. So
yeah, and then there's just so many, like we went through this with my grandfather. He was in hospice and hooked up to machines and all this stuff. And, he was older, much older, right? And in his 80s. But it still, even then, we have my grandmother, his wife, we have all his 6 daughters, we have grandkids, and everybody wants to have an opinion about when things should happen, right? And so thankfully we kind of all were on the same page, but that's rare, right? And so just taking, like, your family's already having to deal with the tragedy in front of them, right? So like take some stuff off the table for them, so they're not then bickering and causing drama, even more for them.
Well, and that's the thing. And like I said, money makes people do some crazy stuff. I know when my grandparents passed away, it caused a rift with some of the family members because they felt they were entitled to X, Y, or Z. And had there been a complete will and set of instructions, it would have been laid out that, hey, again, that's going back to the final will and testament. But even on the living will, it takes a lot of pressure off of others. And, again, you get to determine from the hospital bed, from a coma or from beyond, what's going on and how you want things laid out. It's your final wishes, right? And then the last document, and actually there's a set of 2. It's called a POA, or a power of attorney. One of the things that happen is while this is in transition, if you passed away, there's still things coming in, but everything kind of gets locked down, frozen, right? And, if you're in a situation where, God forbid, you're in a coma or something like that, you're not medically aware, I guess is what I'm looking for there. You can't make decisions and things like that with regards to, medical things, or financial things is another big one. That power of attorney can really, and you can be very specific. A lot of people are like, oh, power of attorney, then they can take everything. But no, that's not what it is, right? You can be very specific on that stuff as well. So I don't know, Whitney, have you ever had to deal with a power of attorney or anything like that?
No, I used to work. I did a little bit of work in an attorney's office, where they did these documents. And I heard a lot of stories. But one thing about the power of attorney, you might have that living will, right? Hey, here's what I want to have happen. But the power of attorney grants that person who you put in charge the actual legal ability to enact your wishes, to take charge of your wishes. So it's really like if you're going to have the other 2, you've got to have the power of attorney set up, right? So, or if you pass those power of attorney for the financial side, right? They get to actually make those decisions. And, one thing, my grandmother that just passed had that in place. And so that's how, like, her kids had the power of attorney, so they were able to, or her daughter, so she was able to get the documents quicker, like, because otherwise you have to wait. There's this huge, long process you have to wait for to be able to prove the death and all these things, to be able to get everything in order. And, like for my grandmother, it was selling the house. It was, getting the title, all the stuff with her car. And with that power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, my aunt was able just to be in charge. And so it's almost like grandmother's still there, able to do it. So,
well, and that's the thing. I mean, if God forbid they are, out for an extended period of time, or they do pass away, everything still needs to be paid. The bills need to be paid. They're still coming in and things like that. And you wouldn't want the asset, the house, to go in foreclosure because there wasn't the money to pay that mortgage because it was frozen because that person passed away, or, you're not on the checking account for your grandmother, for example. So how are you going to take care of that unless you have that power of attorney? And it's not something that, has to be a long-term type of deal either. Now, if you're dealing with an elderly parent or something like that, that's probably a good cause, especially if there's fear of dementia or Alzheimer's or things like that. But I know, I had a parent go in for surgery a couple of years ago, and it was a pretty serious surgery. And there was the chance, remote as it was, that they may not come out of it. So we had a financial and a medical power of attorney set up, and it was for a week. I mean, it was a short period, right? And that way they could go through the surgery, and, it had a short recovery period, things like that. So it was one of those that it was very temporary until they could kind of get back, in at least mentally 100%. and then could make those decisions on their own as well. So you can, like I said, it's not something where you're giving away the power forever. It's a very temporary thing, or it can be a little longer, however you want to set it up. But I want to be clear, Wendy and I are not attorneys, right? And, we want to make sure we partner you up with attorneys. And the Turning Point Group, our financial side, as well as Black Swan Money, have partnered up with an organization. I've been a client for 20 years, plus 20 years. I became a client in 2000, and it saved me a bunch of money with things like this, setting up the will and things like that, as well as a few tickets and whatnot. It's always good to have an attorney that you can reach out to. But the question then becomes, okay, something happened. Now I've got to find one. Right. I would rather have that relationship set up. And we've partnered, and Wendy's going to put the link in the comments below, but you can actually set this up for, I think it's like $25, $29 a month or something like that, and have that, that insurance, if you will, that you've got somebody that's on your side, that you've got somebody to reach out to. And there's a bunch of perks as well as that membership. And again, you can go check it out. If it's great for you, fantastic. If not, no big deal. But it's a great place to start. And as you come on, they set up a free will for you right out of the gate. I mean, they've got all these other documents that they can set up for you too.
Yeah. And I love too that they'll update that annually for you, because things change. I always say, I gotta tell this one funny story. So there were a group of me, and I had two like best girlfriends, and we all kind of had kids at the same time, or my first kids, all at the same time. And the one girl of the group was like the ideal like mom, right? Mm-hmm. And so the other girl of the group they decided if something happens to her and her husband, then this friend gets the kids, because she was like the perfect mom with the perfect marriage and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we got back together. We hung out for a long time, and then we all went our separate ways for a couple of years. We come back together, and we laughed about it because we're at dinner, and the one friend that had the perfect marriage and all that stuff, well, she was divorced. And so I'm like, I think it's time to update your will, right? Like,
well, and you'd be surprised. Update your will, and in those situations, don't forget to update your beneficiaries too. But it's definitely something that it takes so little effort, especially when you've got a great crew on your side, like the company we're talking about, to help you through it. And don't try to do it on your own. And I see people going out and trying to, let me just make one up, for something I found on the internet or something like that. And it's like, I don't know, that's kind of scary. But it's something that you definitely want to think about. So just to recap, as we're wrapping up here, you want to have your last will and testament in place. Okay. You want to have a living will in place. And then the last one is you want to have the POA, power of attorney, which are two separate documents. Again, click the link below, and they'll actually be able to, help you out. And if you have any questions on that stuff, again, we're not attorneys. We're not giving you legal advice, but you need to have, we've got another video we did on your money team. You've got to have an attorney as part of your money team, and they've got small business programs as well, or solopreneur programs too. So take a look at it. Hopefully that helps, but it's critical. Last thing you want to do, and so many people overlook this, you build this massive empire. You're in the process of building your empire, and you don't protect it. Mm-hmm. And that's where things happen. I mean, it's definitely something you want to watch. And there are a lot of people out there that want to take it from you, right? Whether it's lawsuits or whatever the case may be. So again, get those documents in place, protect yourself, protect your family, and that way you don't have to worry about it. So everybody have a great day. And we will see you next Tuesday on Money Moves. Bye.
Bye.
All right.